Yeah, but the fact that they need a yacht to be happy is ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous.
That's that. Park that for a second.
I can't park it. It's the whole issue.
Hello, thank you for joining us today in London and however you're spending your day. I really do appreciate you listening to us today. Welcome. It's Think Twice with myself, Ben Urbano.
And Tef.
And today's a big episode. It's probably the philosophical ideology that birthed this show.
Absolutely. This is where it started.
It's probably the most simple one to understand. It's utilitarianism, which is basically the greatest amount of good for the most amount of people, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's essentially what it is. It's a consequentialist theory which basically relies heavily on the outcome. I don't love that. Teaser. I don't love that at all. But it's about balancing interests. So it's about balancing different factors in order to come to a conclusion at the end, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of utilitarianism is taking each person as one unit of well-being and trying to maximize all of the well-being through the decision-making that you use for the group in question. So trying to maximize the most amount of good for the most amount of human beings.
Lovely. Which brings us to our first question.
Let's run it.
Do you have a feeling I know how this is going to go? Should you provide jobs to marginalized communities if doing so will negatively impact the environment?
Yes, I think you should. And the reason why I think you should is that marginalized communities, by definition of them being marginalized, have an undersized impact on the environment. And I think there's multiple studies that show that rich people and people who have a lot consume a lot and therefore impact the environment a lot more than the average person. I think studies show something between like 35 and 40 times more of a carbon footprint when you are in the top 1% of earners in a society. So I just think the rich people are taking up more of the environment, impacting the environment in a more significant way. The environment and the impact on the environment can now not be used to not give marginalized communities an opportunity to earn some money.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah? You agree with me?
Yeah, of course. I can't see how it's the responsibility of a marginalized community to understand the impact of their work.
And to organize society's
Precisely.
impact on the environment.
It's the government's responsibility. It's not them, and they shouldn't take that burden.
100%.
Firstly. And secondly, they're like disproportionately affected
Exactly.
by climate change, essentially.
100%.
For example, like if we take like hot environments, they're the people that can't afford AC.
Yeah.
So I just can't see how they should now not be able to work or shouldn't be offered jobs as a result of environmental factors.
Some analysis that someone's done in an office somewhere. And to go even further than that, past the AC point, there's also the point of when there's an environmental disaster, it's the poor people who didn't have comprehensive insurance.
Yeah.
It's the poor people whose houses were on the coast and get fucking blown away and they can't get back up on their feet. People with means can just relocate. Like, okay, my property, was blown away by the tsunami, but not only have I got comprehensive insurance and I'm gonna get all that back, I've also got a property somewhere else. So I can move, wait for that stuff to resolve itself and move back if I want to. I've got opportunities to move around. And on top of all of that, think about the architecture of a lot of cities. A lot of cities, the architecture is such that the rich people live in areas that aren't impacted by extreme weather historically. Because if you think about if you're a settler in a city, if you have money and you're the one building the city, you're gonna put yourself in a nice area. And historically, those areas will be occupied by people who have, and the places that are exposed are gonna be occupied by people who don't have. So I think in that scenario, you just got to give them the jobs.
Of course, they're struggling on two fronts, essentially. They struggling with poverty.
Yeah,
And as a result of struggling with poverty, that's why they need the work.
exactly.
And then secondly, they struggle most from the environmental factors anyway.
100%.
So which one are you going to choose, basically?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I'm struggling to find a sort of argument against it. I'm struggling to play devil's advocate against it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely an argument against it, and it's an argument that focuses on the severity of the climate crisis right now and the importance of the climate crisis. And I guess if I was playing devil's advocate, I would even use our argument about impacting the environment against us. So I could say, for example, Benz, I appreciate that you said that people who are poor are like disproportionately impacted by extreme weather conditions and climate change related disasters. And I would say that's an even bigger reason that we should protect the environment and we should try to prevent the climate crisis worsening so that those people are not impacted by multiple and worsening climate disasters.
Yeah, but my argument against that was, because I thought about that same, and my argument against that was they are already struggling. So it's sort of like, it's not as if their quality of life drastically decreases. It's already not great.
Yeah, and generally I think, look, they're struggling on the poverty front, and this job, presumably providing these jobs to that community, will presumably alleviate the poverty-related problems. And let's be honest, poverty is one of these things that like it impacts everything. Like if you're stressed about like where your next meal is gonna come from, if you're stressed about like job insecurity, you're stressed about like can I provide for my children? There's really nothing else that matters.
Yeah.
Like you can't be expected to be the people who's gonna alleviate some larger societal problem. On the other hand, I do feel like the severity of the climate crisis is probably society's biggest problem right now. Like larger than anything. So I think the government and those rich people basically need to be cut down to size. Like their consumption cannot be 50 times more than the average person. And I just think something needs to be done about that. Like it's bonkers to me that someone can impact the environment 50 times more than everyone else. And that's fine.
And you know, so this is why I really struggle with utilitarianism. Because a utilitarianist would argue that they shouldn't have jobs. And that's because the majority would benefit from them not having jobs.
Immediately, I would have a problem with a utilitarian saying that because, and this is a weakness of consequentialism more generally, is that consequentialism is obsessed with what is going to happen from the result of my action. After my action, how are people impacted? But in the real world, the impact of a lot of actions is not
so undetermined.
Known.
It's undetermined.
It's undetermined. And because of that, a lot of the calculations that we might do as a utilitarian or through the utilitarian lens are kind of uncertain. So I'd immediately push back on that utilitarian and be like, how can you quantify the environmental impact of these jobs being created? Like how can you do that?
Essentially, because if we have a marginalized community, right, that's a small amount of people. And if
it could be a fairly big like number,
but it's still a smaller amount of people, right?
Right. It's not the majority.
It's a minority.
Got you.
And as a result of that, if their benefit negatively impacts everybody else, a utilitarian has to argue that they shouldn't have those jobs.
Yeah, that's fair, but you know what I was saying, like the one unit of human well-being being equal to one person. If that one person is like only slightly inconvenienced, like the well-being hit on them is really small, say that's 1 million people. But for 100,000 people, the well-being impact is massive. Like it's huge, like 70% of their well-being.
That's a whole nother problem with consequentialism and utilitarianism, to be fair. That it's hard to be impartial, basically. You don't know what the values of each thing or each unit.
Exactly. And now even if you try that calculation, you're going to be talking about like measuring someone else's well-being, like how someone else will see that problem, like, you know what I mean? And it's always quite difficult to do that, especially in a marginalized group where like the problems that marginalized group faces is sometimes like not clear to the rest of the population, to the wider society, because they are literally marginalized. Like their voices are not heard, their problems are not understood. So like when someone in government is like writing up some policy or like how we're gonna affect, like solve climate change, it just makes me feel a bit uneasy that someone sat in government, you know, usually of a certain demographic, is gonna tell this marginalized community, this is how you're gonna be impacted. So there's a lot of like complications there that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah. That leads us on to like the next question, which is basically, is utilitarianism an effective tool for creating a happier society?
It's mad that I've been saying everything I've been saying up to this point, because I do think it can be an effective tool. I just feel like the goal of utilitarianism, which is to basically increase the well-being of human beings, is a noble goal. And I think it can play a part in the analysis that politicians and like people who run our society, like their analysis, part of that can have utilitarianism in it. But obviously a lot of what we were talking about is using utilitarianism as the be-all and end-all. And I think when you use utilitarianism without, say, compassion or like justice at the forefront of your mind, or like empathy, what you get is like these cold, hard calculations of like human well-being, 1 + 1 = 2. But it's like you forget that these are human beings, and you forget that you need to have empathy and compassion involved. But I think if you do have empathy and compassion involved, you know, it's good. Like if you think about a utilitarian thing, like redistribution of wealth, for example, that's a clearly utilitarian point of view. Like we want less inequality, and a very easy way to do that is to take from the very rich and distribute it amongst the rest of society, right?
I think by definition, you have to have a happier society.
Yeah, you agree?
Well, literally by definition.
Yeah.
Because if the majority are happier,
Yeah.
then it is a happier society, right? But do I think it's good?
Is it an effective tool?
But happier, but is it a good society? Because the issue with the majority being happy means that marginalized groups can now be extremely unhappy.
I see where you're coming from, but part of my thinking is that if the marginalized group is marginalized and their well-being is affected, a lot of like policy, utilitarian policy, would be targeted at improving their lot in life. Because their well-being is so much less than the average well-being that we're going for.
So are you saying that you don't think that like someone's happiness is diametrically opposed to someone else's happiness?
I don't think that to be the case, no. No way. I just think as human beings, we do need and want certain very easy to decipher factors in our life to be happy. Like everyone wants a job that is stable, rewarding, and fairly well paid. Like everyone wants to be able to eat a certain amount of food in the week. Everyone wants shelter over their heads. Everyone wants their kids to have decent education. And I think a lot of marginalized groups don't even have that.
But we understand there's like a limited amount of capital, right?
It's a limited amount of capital, but I definitely think in today's society, we have enough capital for those things to be true for everyone. Easily. When I'm telling you people like have 50, 60, 40, 50 times the amount of consumption that someone else does, surely before we get rid of that, we can't be talking about resources running up. People have yachts and private jets.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But if that like is directly related to their happiness, right?
Rich people.
Yeah, like a rich person, like they feel that they need a yacht to be as happy as they can be.
Mm-hmm.
Them having that yacht takes away from somebody else, right?
Yeah, but the fact that they need a yacht to be happy is ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous.
That's that. Park that for a second.
I can't park it. It's the whole issue.
Nah, you need to please park that for a second. Like,
okay.
Come with me on this journey.
All right, man. Why not? Just don't take me to a mad place.
If excess is part of somebody's happiness, then somebody may be extremely happy with complete minimalism.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. That's true. And it's difficult to think this is normal for a person to feel like they need excess, material excess as well, to be happy. Like, I just think that person needs to go therapy. Like, come on. State-sponsored therapy, but therapy it is. Do you not think like there's some imbalance and trauma there? Maybe like their self-worth is wrapped up in the material things that they have.
But I don't see that as a huge issue. If you can remain in that bubble, it's not a huge issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but their consumption of material goods becomes an issue on an environmental level, doesn't it?
Yeah, in that level. Yeah. But in the same sense that somebody who lives a completely minimalistic life has a negative effect on it. And so I'm arguing that they balance each other out.
Yeah, it might balance it out, but I think we're talking from a moral perspective. The excess is morally wrong in the way that the minimalism isn't. The excess impacts everyone. It impacts the environment, which impacts everyone. The minimalism is just like something you do for yourself.
Yeah, but we were talking about a happier society, right? And how people achieve their happiness is important to factor in.
Yeah, but at what point do you think, okay, this person, like Thanos is happy when he kills half the population? Like, but we can't tolerate that, right? So there has to come a line where it's like, what you are happy about or makes you happy is impacting everyone else. We can't tolerate it. We need to draw a line somewhere. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
and like, I think the line comes at like, I don't know, maybe we say it's like 2-3x the average or some set carbon emissions level. It cannot be beyond that. Like, past that, it's just like, come on, guys. What are we doing?
Yeah, I hear you.
You're taking up someone else's spot there. Do you not think?
I agree. I agree.
Fair enough. Cool.
I was just smiling because I know what's coming next.
This is the original moral dilemma. For those of you that have followed along, this is the very first moral dilemma that me and Benz ever spoke about. This is the OG. Do
you want to give them how like we used to run it?
How I see it running?
How we used to run it?
Yeah. So me and Benz, you know, we'll be sat, relaxing, chilling. Usually at a party, at someone's house.
Young ladies back, you know, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Back in the day.
And there's one of two things that might happen. Me and Benz might just start talking, and everyone's like, what are they talking about? What's that? Trolley? Train tracks? Lever? And they'll come over and we just get a little crowd around us. And we'd explain the problem to them, and they start discussing amongst themselves, discussing amongst the party. And then suddenly the whole party's
everyone's talking about this.
And people were gripped.
Yeah, people love this one.
Even the person that was quiet in the corner, like they want to go home, they're like, actually, let's cancel that Uber.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's stick around for this.
Would I pull it?
And
do you want to tell them you can introduce this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Since you started it all.
This is called the Trolley Problem. So the Trolley Problem is a very, very famous utilitarian moral dilemma. And this is how it goes, Benz. I want you to imagine you're on a platform. That platform looks down at some train tracks. You can see that there's 5 workers on those train tracks, and you can also see a train coming down the tracks towards these 5 workers. They have headphones on, you know, the big industrial ones, and that train is going to hit them, and they will die. On the platform next to you, you've got a lever, and that lever, you know, will divert the train off the line of those train tracks. The problem is, if you pull the lever, it will divert it onto some train tracks where there are 2 workers. So if you pull the lever, 2 workers will die. If you don't pull the lever, 5 will die. Do you pull the lever?
Of course I don't.
You don't?
Yeah, of course I don't.
I don't know why I'm acting surprised. I know you're going to say that.
Yeah, you know what I was going to say. I just don't see the idea of playing God and the idea that you're responsible for killing 2 people, even if it was 1 person, I don't think is your responsibility.
That was a good turn of phrase, playing God. I think that's going to convince some people. But I just think you are in this scenario, you are already involved.
No, you're not.
And you need to make a decision.
That's the key difference. I don't think I'm already involved. I'm a bystander. I'm a witness.
But you have the ability to change the outcome of this scenario. And 5 people will die if you do nothing.
So what do you do?
I pull the lever.
And why do you pull the lever?
I pull the lever because, like I said, I am involved in this scenario. Like, either way, this is going to plague me for the rest of my life. And I cannot stand there and watch 5 people die, basically at my own hand, when I had the power to save those 5 lives.
Okay. So, say we have a train going towards those 5 people. You're on a bridge. And there's a fat man in front of you. The train's going towards these 5 people. Do you push this fat man off the bridge?
Oh, that's a good variation. It's a good variation. I've actually not heard you come up with this variation before. And for a bit of context, this variation does get a lot of people. They're like, I can't push the guy. I can't lie. No,
I feel like
I'm not pushing him. I can't push him.
You know when I ask me that question, I say, so why are you doing this? Because you want to save people? Okay, cool. Now save this person. Basically it. And I just don't believe that the reason why people want to do it is because they want to save someone. It can't be that simple.
It's not that simple, but that's a massive part of why I pull the lever. Like, I can save 5 people's lives.
Yeah, but you can still save 5 people's lives. And now you only have to kill 1. You only have to kill 2.
Hey, listen, there might be some days where I push the guy. There may be some days. There's even days where I'm like, I don't pull the lever. It's a very difficult scenario. And I guess in a wider context, the scenario is a great consequentialist moral dilemma because you know exactly what's going to happen. You know exactly that when you pull this lever, the train tracks will be diverted and 2 people will die. But obviously in real life, like, that's not necessarily how it works. Like, you might pull the lever, the train might derail off the tracks and 15 people in the train die because you fucking derailed the train. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So there's a lot of unknown factors in the real world. But I just think in a controlled environment where I can pull the lever, and I know 5 people are not going to die now. And unfortunately, 2 people pass away. But
You've only saved 3 people's lives.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
But I saved the lives. You didn't do shit.
You say you saved lives, but you killed 2 people.
Yeah, I did. And I just think I had to do that. I had 2 choices. One was 5 people dead. The other one was 2 people dead. 2 people dead, does that not sound better than 5 people dead?
Does 0 people killed sound better than 2 people killed?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing. 0 people killed.
Killed? No. I didn't say killed.
But I did. That's what I said.
It's a tough scenario. Let me put it to you this way, right? Let's say you're on a car park at Tesco. You see a trolley, an actual trolley, just someone dashed it and it's hurtling towards some kid. Do you jump in front of the trolley? You got a split second to make a decision. Do you go and jump in front of the trolley?
Yeah.
Right. Because you can see that trolley is gonna go hit that kid and hurt that kid. So in a utilitarian sense, you wanna reduce the harm done to the kid. You don't necessarily know what's gonna happen when you jump and go and do that. But in that split second, you got to make that decision.
Yeah.
And I think in that split second when I'm on the bridge, I got to make that decision. I just got to do it. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and I think the trolley and killing someone is different.
No, of course, I've toned it down a lot there.
Yeah, and that's basically why I think the consequences are so grave that if you are to make that decision, you're essentially murdering people and you've got no responsibility and you've been given no authority to do it. You have just decided upon yourself that you are important enough to pull a lever to kill people.
No, that's mad framing. The way you frame that is crazy. Don't think I don't know what you're doing. Listen, you have moral agency. You can act as a moral individual. And as a moral individual, you have the power and the means to make a moral decision. You don't need to be given authority by someone else to make a moral choice.
Well, I think it does when other people's lives are involved. I think you should be given authority to make that decision.
By who?
By those people. So take that scenario, right? And you're a labor union rep or something, or you're
Which
their manager.
Trolley.
Okay. And you're the manager of the network rail. And you see this happening. And you've discussed before, if this happens, it's up to you to make a decision when you're on duty.
Right. Okay.
That's absolutely fine. You then make the decision. But as a witness, as a bystander, I have not been given the authority to make that decision over other people's lives where people can perish.
I appreciate that, but that's a very narrow, unique scenario. So like, there's certain factions, religious factions, that don't take blood from anyone. If you take blood, it's a sin, it's a mortal sin. So they wear like cards around their necks. Like, if I have fatal injury, don't give me blood, let me die.
Okay.
So like, where does the authority come from here? Because now when that person's wheeled into hospital, that the doctor has authority as well. He has his own authority in the medical profession.
Yeah, unless told otherwise.
Not necessarily.
Well, so if they say don't take my blood, don't take their blood.
No, I appreciate that, but like, I'm trying to like display the problem with like trying to find some higher authority to allow you to make a moral decision. Like, you should be able to just make moral decisions based on
your and I think
own
the
judgment.
moral decision is not to be involved. It's a mortal sin to kill somebody. I don't know if it can ever be morally justified, particularly in this scenario, by killing 2 people to save 3.
I hear that as a mortal sin. I do actually genuinely hear that. And like I said, it's a very difficult scenario. But there's 5 people there. You have the power. You're going to be fucked up in your conscience anyway, regardless of whether you pull the lever or you don't pull the lever. You might tell me I might sleep better at night if you don't pull the lever. But I could never do that. I have empathy.
Sympathy.
Yeah, both. Thanks for the top up. Do you know what I mean? I empathize with those 5 people. And I'm like, I empathize with the 2 people as well. But it's just so difficult for me to just sit there and not do nothing.
What do you think it says about your character? Do you think you're more of a courageous person as a result?
I do think the act of pulling the lever requires more courage than not pulling the lever, for sure. So yes, maybe. But I think people with poor moral character would pull the lever as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be a range of people that would pull the lever. There's actually a very funny YouTube, I say funny, it's not that funny, but someone does this experiment in real life. They actually simulate someone being in a studio and they can see the train coming at 5 people. And they literally simulate that. And they do all sorts of stuff to convince that person that it's real life. It's obviously not real. It's just like a video. But it's absolutely fascinating. And go and watch it in your spare time. But the reactions that people have, so funny. It's funny because we know that it's not, you know what I mean? But a lot of people just don't pull the lever. A lot of people just don't pull the lever. But you can see the angst on them. Like, they're literally like shaking, crying. You know what I mean? So I would say that maybe you wouldn't be that comfortable sleeping at night after not pulling the lever.
Well, I guess we'll never know. Anyway, have you got anything else?
No, I think that was a nice episode. It's good to give the people our introduction into this world, to tell them the OG moral dilemma.
Real talk.
100.
So thank you for joining us again. We shall see you soon. Look after yourselves.
See you next week.
Much love. Yes, sir.
Are you gonna introduce me or how are we gonna
I don't
do
know,
this?
you know what? I feel like I should go Benz.
Benz and Tef.
Yeah, because I say
Benno
Ben
and
on I give them, I don't like that.
But yeah, they got the picture.
Huh?
They got the picture.
Yeah.